engaged in working programs, and others have been doing for decades that have finally resulted in what is, yes, this is a tremendous project. It's because of a tremendous opportunity. Right? So we have the years and years of work characterizing the clinical high-risk state. Perhaps that's the component of the background work that many of you in this room have been engaged in for decades. There's also the coincident discovery of hundreds of genetic clues for psychiatry, the result of an even larger project, if you think about it, although not nearly as unified over decades, to generate the samples necessary to identify genetic linkages to schizophrenia. Those linkages were important in terms of groundwork for this project, not so much yet because of the scientific payloads that they have delivered, but because of two things. Number one, they further underscored the legitimacy of schizophrenia as an entity that, despite its heterogeneity, is worth attacking from a comprehensive perspective. Secondly, the discovery of these potential biological pathways re-energized at least certain aspects of the pharmaceutical industry community because of the promise of new targets to come. Next, some of that community has generated, finally, after decades and decades of Me Too drugs, novel compounds with novel mechanisms that are ready to be tested in novel samples of individuals with this disorder and or with the clinical high-risk state. Next, and many of you have pioneered this, the integration of computational approaches that have the promise of being able to dissect the heterogeneity of mental illnesses. The integration of those approaches into psychiatric research has really accelerated tremendously in the last 5 years or so. And then finally, throughout society, the increased recognition of a crisis in youth mental health, which, although it has accelerated dramatically since the pandemic, was already raging before the pandemic and was already at the forefront of the minds of policymakers around the globe before the pandemic. So you put these scientific advances, characterization of the clinical high-risk state, the discovery of genes, the identification of novel compounds with novel mechanisms, the integration of computational approaches, with the societal recognition that we need to deal with mental illness as in the setting of youth. It created this opportunity to assemble this tremendous group and to address what we know is a key scientific goal and clinical goal: understanding and intervening in individuals at risk for schizophrenia and other forms of mental illness in this clinical high-risk state. We can't be Pollyanna-ish about this project, especially given the tremendous investments that both the government and the private sector are putting into this project. There are continued threats that have the potential to derail us. We continue to face outside of the scientific enterprise and within the scientific enterprise, the false trope that research has not led to improvements in care. As hopefully you'll learn, as NIMH celebrates its 75th anniversary in the coming year, this is decidedly a false trope. Many of you have participated in research projects that have directly improved the mental health care for millions throughout the United States and throughout the world. But nonetheless, this trope is oft repeated, even by NIMH grantees who want to make a statement about how important their own research is. We continue to face the threat of the heterogeneity of schizophrenia and other mental illnesses, and the complexity of the organ from which these illnesses derive, and the lack of, I shouldn't say lack, the continued state of partial understanding of the function of that organ. This threat is most direct to this project, because in this project, we seek eventually to identify mechanistic biomarkers that can help develop yet another generation of treatments beyond those that we hope to pilot with the upcoming clinical trials. And the third threat that we face is related to that false trope, continued skepticism on the part of policymakers and the private sector that investments in mental health research will pay off. Those are the threats that we must meet here in this room and throughout the clinics around the globe that you all have assembled to respond to those threats. We have the potential with the upcoming clinical trials to do at least one and hopefully two things. One, to prove that this network can identify individuals at risk, test treatments in that population, and give a thumbs up or thumbs down in a definitive way to whether those treatments will be effective either for the domains of psychosis or for other psychiatric symptomatology that these individuals experience. And then, so that's just proving that we can actually do this scientific endeavor, whether we actually successfully help the individuals we seek to treat or not with these trials. And the second, of course, is that hopefully one of the compounds that we test will actually lead to improvements for individuals and will pay off directly in terms of improvements in our ability to care for them. Either one of those outcomes or both would be wonderful, but failure in those can be problematic because of the threats I already mentioned. So as we attempt to meet those challenges, as we attempt to pull this immense undertaking off, which involve tremendous sacrifice by each of you in terms of sacrificing your own individual scientific goals for the goals of the community, sacrificing your own ideas about what the best protocol is or what the best sample population is, again, for the needs of this community. As we attempt to meet these challenges, I urge you to remember that what we do together today will not only result in the potential success of this program, but pave the way for similar programs and for continued investments in mental health research. And I think it's bigger than just schizophrenia. It's bigger than just the clinical high-risk state. And at the same time, it's also amazing because we can see this project succeeding even as we are meeting together today. And in the end, that's what I'm most excited about today. Hearing from early career investigators this morning, from our keynote speaker, and from the more senior investigators this afternoon about the progress that we're making and about the potential for this project to really make a difference, not only in terms of achieving its goals, but setting the stage for future endeavors similar in scale and ambition. So thank you very much for convening today. For those of you who made the trip from literally the other side of the globe or just the other side of town, which in New York sometimes can take as long to get to as the other side of the globe. Really appreciate it and looking forward to the day. Thanks.